Well, morning, fellow zombies. How are we doing this morning? Yeah, that way about it, huh? Another feeling. Good lord. It's about 2:06 in the morning, and it is the 28th of July, 2022. It is Thursday. We're coming across to the end of the month, aren't we? And more death of celebrities that I recognized, and Tony Dow, God rest his soul. The information finally got corrected. Somebody tried to jump the gun originally without doing the official confirmations, and everybody else reacted to it about a couple of days ago. Now, yesterday, the son of Tony Dow actually gave corrected information to them, and Tony Dow is still dead. Just the timing sucked. But they got the information, and everyone is still sad about it. They're still passing out the condolences. And other people. Uh, since I have started this journey regarding grieving, concerning about how I feel about it, how other people feel about it, it's opened up a very depressing gray world for me. Maybe for some of the grievers who actually been through it and they've gotten some positive feedback or something that they've done positive about it, is shove the pain aside and not deal with it as much, but looking at more positive aspects of this. And they just don't want to focus on the uglier side of it. They just don't want to deal with it. They just want to shove it all out, the pain on the side, and still deal with a beautiful world, because that's all they want to hope for. And me, unfortunately, I'm like the opposite at the end. I'm not asking for the gray world. I live in the gray world. I hadn't been able to be positive about a hell of a lot of things in my life. That's why I don't have that much friends. That's why I don't have that many friends these days. I am not a positive and happy guy sometimes, but even though I try to pretend like I am. You've seen some of those people out there some of the celebrities who've laughed their way, and then you realize how come they had such a tragedy, because they were laughing to get rid of the damn pain. They didn't want to deal with the pain. They didn't want to deal with the misery. They didn't want to deal with the ugliness. They didn't want to face all the damn time and be that kind of a person. I would lived with myself all this time. A great person. A guy who couldn't even fit in if he wanted to. There was always something wrong with this guy. There was always something wrong with this kid. He was always the loner that you always picked on all the damn time. Well, yeah, I did. I was. Because death had changed me a bit, and not to the point where I'm going to be seeing angels or demons, shit like that. No, I'm not John Constantine, thank you very much. But I didn't have a good perspective concerning about how to live life or not live life. I know, I came out bad on that one. How do I explain the gray world to you at this point over here? It's like if you're living in total fear, and sometimes you have to be muted by it, and you still have to work through it. Despite the fact that I had a few times of prayer in my youth that would have given me strength to carry out for a few other things, I still had to work through the damn emotions and the thoughts and everything else. I could be creative like crazy. I can get the accolades if necessary if I actually got that level or something, or demonstrated something like that. Hell, if I showed myself to be a Trekkie at this point over here, I'm an outcast. At least when growing up, a royal outcast. Nobody understood it. Nobody wanted to understand it. I was a guy who was just weird. That's it. Weird. Nerdy. Geek. I was a guy that'd stick his head in a damn computer screen and stay there and just not deal with people, or stick my face in the book and not deal with people at all. I'm the loner. Screw going to a library because library you still have people around you. I didn't want people around me. As much as I felt growing up isolated like crazy, I was still trying to develop if I still had any feelings for my mother and my brother. And as I got older and had to be more responsible and realize the mistakes I've made and some mistakes I couldn't correct and other mistakes I still had to. You still had to learn and grow. You still had to develop. I lost so many damn people. And I couldn't even grieve and I couldn't even mourn. I couldn't. It sucks not grieving and not mourning. Because life keeps telling you, you got to deal with this, you got to deal with that, you got to. I had to deal with it. And I had to be moody sometimes. However, I did have a sick sense of humor. But in the meantime, I'm still alone inside. My head could be filled with so many damn adventures at this point over here, I couldn't even write them down. But if I did write them down, I didn't want anybody else to read the damn things either. You're talking about a pure isolated kid here. Trying to conform to life and reality with all its pain, with all its grief, and with all the beauty happening around me that I couldn't share with. I mean, some people are actually feeling sorry for this kid. They wanted to realize if there was anything with this kid, they can actually deal with life. I mean, there had been times when I was playful enough as a young kid growing up, and I did have I did have a few friends. I still argued with them, and they still thought I was an asshole. Maybe, maybe, maybe I was an asshole during that time. I wanted people around me, but then again, I didn't want people around me. And it sucked. I had problems trying to relate with people at work and had to work with it. Had to deal with it. Had to deal with relationships. And what drove me crazy sometimes is I had to deal with death. There was one time I worked at Circuit City and there was this guy I befriended. I thought he was a nice guy. He worked, his name was Levine. I think so. Matt Levine, Art Levine. But he worked in the automotive department over at Circuit City Northridge on Devonshire and Balboa. He had been there for a few years as a salesperson. And decent enough, and he was car stereos. But he was also a decent enough guy. Some people consider him nerdy. He was a bit of a geek himself. He just showed it in different ways. It didn't get to me about his differences. What got to me was some of his similarities. Kind of reminded me of a few people I used to know. And probably it's what had kind of endeared me to him. I know he was also Jewish. Yeah, I wish I had asked him questions about it. I didn't. I didn't want to go into his past like that. But I do know that he was decent enough to talk about other things. So we dealt with each other fairly enough. Until one day, he didn't show up for work. And the next day, and the next day, until we discovered that he had a heart attack and passed away. When I heard about it, I was taken back about it because he was a good guy. Here's the thing. During that time, I didn't allow myself, or it wasn't given to me enough to really grieve and mourn for the guy. People keep thinking that when you hear something that tragic, you got to go open with the tear ducts and everything else. No, it takes a while sometimes for some people, and other people it is instantaneous. But for me, I didn't know how to feel for that guy, except I felt sad that he died. But they thought I was going to be taking it very hard. I didn't know myself, and they didn't know me very well. But they tried to comfort me. It irritated the hell out of me. It really did. As much as I liked the guy, at that point, I didn't have the deep-seated feelings for the guy to really cry for him. Except I felt sad that he died. I was, it did make me feel lousy about it, but also not grieving for him as well. I should have, but it didn't hit me as hard. It should have. But our relationship wasn't built that deeply enough, and it wasn't that. I don't know what the hell happened. It's just I should have reacted, but I reacted the way I did during that time. There had been other times when I've actually had to go to another person's funeral. It's one thing, family or friends, but coworkers are different. When you work with them long hours, they always become like a pseudo family. And sometimes you are allowed to grieve a little bit. And really didn't do the deep seated stuff. I guess I didn't allow myself to go further into that. And it really didn't hit me as hard. I Sometimes I have a hard enough time trying to talk to people about it because other times when I'm clear-headed enough and I'm not emotional about it, I can deal with it. I can go into the past to find the origins of the triggers and to be able to explain why I didn't feel about this and why I didn't feel about that. But when I started getting into more of the emotional range of people closer to me, it gets even harder and harder as I know other people have a problem with. And they're still having a problem with it online. People for years are still having a problem trying to talk about their lost loved ones. Regardless of what a relationship they are, they're still lost loved ones. It's hard to bring up the information, especially when you got a grief that instilled. When you're tapping into love that much, that you feel robbed, cheated, you're angry about it, you're frustrated about it, you're pissed off about it, and you don't know who to be pissed off at. God, fate, life, death, yourself. A lot of self-blame out there. A lot of self-blame. It's a lot of guilt. It's a lot of pressure. The relatives I had and the friends I had, sometimes I wonder if I could have done something about it. The truth of the matter is, nope. There was one guy in junior high, a kid, Jimmy Baker. Big brother, Greg Baker, about 1 or 2 years. 7th grade, me and this other guy, Jim, called Too Tall. He was about 5 or 6 foot for a teenager. About 13-year-old. Jeez. I swear this guy was a tree. Nice guy, though. Jimmy Baker was a short kid. About 4 or 5 foot, maybe. Squirt. And he was picked on by his brother, who was maybe a few inches taller than him, but senior, and he liked picking on his brother. Maybe it was a way for him showing his brotherly love for him, but man, his younger brother wanted to go out with him one on one, just having a having a bloodfest with these guys. Having a semester spent with a kid, you kind of get to know a little bit more about him. I didn't know enough about his family history, but all I know is what the problems he had on campus with his big brother. His big brother was going to be graduating out of ninth grade, and his little brother's trying to survive seventh grade. He couldn't deal with anything else and everything else, and he hung himself. Hung himself at home. It affected the campus a bit, but not much. Those who knew him, we didn't go to the services or funerals or anything else like that. We were told about the information through other sources and through administration and teachers and stuff. But after that, forget it. If there was grief counselors, I didn't see them. I didn't hear about them. Nothing. Sucked. Could have talked about them, but I felt sad. Maybe I cried a little bit for him. But the only thing that I majorly cried about in junior high was when I lost an aunt that have finally changed from an old, well, I gotta say it, I'm sorry, M.A., from an old bat or old battle axe to a nicest lady I could ever hug. And that kind of relationship with the aunt stuck with me for a long while. 6 months after she passes away in '79, I happened to get a dream with her in it, smiling her face off with her blue and white favorite nightgown. She's not youthful. She is still the same way I remembered her. And then she passes, she fades off. I'm waking up, and all day I'm torn apart over a damn thing. That's when the grief in the morning, that's when the grief just had to hit me like crazy. But then afterwards, nothing. I didn't even do enough grieving for my own grandmother. Ma had to put everything else in perspective. She had to go on automatic. David, too. We're both trying to support each other. Me, I'm trying to hide from everything, trying to process it all. When you lose loved ones, sometimes you do need to have time to process the death. You need to find time to process it. No matter how painful it gets. Sorry, I'm itchy. No matter how you feel about it, you still have to put it into a perspective where you can understand. And it takes a while. It takes a long while. For my brother and me, I know that something happened between an ambulance ride and the ER. And somehow, a short 10-minute hop between Roseman and the hospital. He gave up on life. My brother was waking me up early in the morning. 2018 in September. He already has suffered through a series of mini strokes, TIAs, transischemic attacks, several points of his brain that affected speech, dysphagia, mobility. So he can barely take care of himself. But he goes over to my bedroom door and says, "I can't breathe." The simplest, clearest words I could ever get out of my brother. And I'm on the phone calling him. Right then, calling 911, getting my brother up to the chair and just sitting him down. And I'm watching him as I'm talking to 911 on speaker. And Meanwhile, I gotta get this place cleaned up a little bit because the ambulance would be coming and they'll be bringing the gurneys and the equipment, and I would have no room to deal with these guys. So I had to clean it. I had to move things around a little bit until he got in, and took my brother, did the vitals, put him in a gurney, sitting up, and then I had to lock up, take care of the dog, grab a go bag, go in the ambulance, and go to the hospital. During that time, I didn't have anybody I could trust or know that would actually have a working car that would take me to the hospital at that time. Still don't. And trying to arrange transportations and letting people know what the hell is going on and trying to keep myself busy at this point over here. There was no sound except for the ambulance warbling. But if there was a fight going on inside the cabin of where they were taking care of my brother, I didn't even hear it. But I took my brother out, and he was definitely a meat sequel, a slab of meat, because they poked and prodded, it kept fluids in him, and then he's in the ER, and some of the tubing was still in him, but they were trying to keep his airway going. September 8th. I could not. I could not handle that day. Everything in my life was in conflict during that time. Shock was setting in. But I tried to keep my brain focused. Wasn't easy. No, it wasn't. I'm leaving messages all over the internet, and texting people left and right. And I had maybe someone came over, be with me until I had another person get me home. And then I had to go back and pick up my brother's stuff about an hour or two later. And then everything else was just trying to hit me at the same time. Other things I had to deal with in life. So I understand about how people can get confused. Some people may not have had life hitting them fast enough where they start reacting in tears like crazy and crying like crazy. I was on survival mode. I had to put myself on a survival mode. Yeah, I was depressed as hell, but I couldn't believe he was gone. I was lucky enough I actually had a couple of people with me to help my brother out. And found a mortuary, crematorium, got him turned into ashes. There he sits. Right next to Ma. Yeah. When shock hits in, it hits in hard. Stays there for a short time. Then it wears off. It's like getting. The shock is an anesthesia. Consider it like an anesthesia at this point over here where you're getting numb. You're getting numb to the idea that you just lost someone and you still have to focus. Your brain is not working very well. It has to go in protection mode. So the only way it could do is put you in the shock mode at this point over here where you're just not thinking clearly enough, but you still have to act. So you're fast acting left and right. That's what I was doing. That's exactly what I was doing, fast acting at this point. And hadn't come to grips during that time, back then, that I was going to be dealing with a lifelong situation. I mean, it's bad enough dealing with Mama. I mean, I thought I put the pain and grief away on that one. No, I just put it aside. Like everything else got put aside because I had to focus. I had to focus. I had to focus, focus, focus. And now, this summer, trigger after trigger after trigger. It's usually the same damn trigger. Anything regarding family. Anything regarding hugging. It's getting to me left and right. I'll talk about it. I'll talk about it. I'll continue to talk about it because I have to talk about it. I'll keep repeating myself on this damn thing because it's the only way I can get past this damn shit. I know other people are having the same issues with themselves, and they just don't understand why. Why is this happening to them? Well, it's happening to you because it's happening to you. Why'd you lose your loved one? I don't know the answer to that one. Well, then how am I supposed to go on? You survive. How? I listened to a podcast once. I still got to go through the whole thing myself. How one person decided to do a walk. Walk away from everything and for maybe a few years just go out and just keep traveling because they didn't want to deal with the pain. They wanted to walk away from the pain. Me, I'm slugfest with it. I'm slugfest with it. I gotta deal with it. I gotta handle it. No matter how hard, no matter how much the universe is shoving down my throat here, I gotta handle it. I gotta deal with it. I gotta handle the pain. That's how I'm built right now. That's how I got rebuilt. And it hurts. It hurts a lot. When I have to look at myself sometimes in the mirror, some days I can't deal with it, and other days I could just look at myself and just say, oh shit, you look ugly. But in dealing and coping with the pain I've got these days, it's a pain in the ass. It is. I know some people will be giving me well, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Well, thank you for the sympathies at this point over here. Unfortunately, it's not going to help me very much. Actually, it does help me a little bit because it tells me that maybe some people are trying to be empathetic about the situation. But if I actually hear somebody actually talking about their own story going on, then I know that they've walked through it and they're still walking through it. So that gives me something to work with. It tells me that it's going to get harder, but it's going to get better maybe some way. I just wish to God I know how. Best of the wheel. Right now, my body is telling me to go back to bed. I'm going back to bed.